So let's do a quick introduction. Maybe from my left-hand side, Michael, you start first.
Good morning, Michael Castro, 20 plus years in cybersecurity. Right now I am a founder of a small boutique company providing cyber and risk advice and CISO type services. But over the 20 years, I've held many roles as CISO and as a security executive.
Hi, I'm Sandra Leap-Kelms. So I don't say no all the time. So it was funny. My team looked at me all of a sudden when the CISO says no. Most of the time, I actually say yes. How can I help you? So that's kind of my claim to fame, is that let's make it work. I have over 20 plus years. Let's not talk about how long I've been doing this. My background is infrastructure, application development, corporate audit. I was at one time a Unix admin, so I do know how stuff works, and a security architect.
Hi, Yaz Alatia. I lead the information security and risk management team at Moneris. Prior to joining Moneris, I had actually worked in both sides of the fence, so working with various financial organizations, as well as in consulting for different industries. So hope to bring some of those perspectives to this conversation.
Wonderful.
Hi, good morning. I'm Zaki Abbas. I'm the CISO for Brookfield Asset Management. For those of you that don't know Brookfield, we're a real asset manager. We're in the infrastructure space, so toll booths, telecom, property space, renewable energy, private equity, and public securities group. My main role as a CISO is to develop the information security strategy and roadmap for the organization and really execute that through a overall comprehensive security program.
Wonderful. All right, so it's my turn now to ask CISO questions. My first question actually related to the title of CISO, because this term relatively new in the industry. So you guys already been in the industry for so many years. So in your mind, what is CISO really about? What is this role really about? Right. So may or may not be directly in your or with your company, right? So, but what is, generally speaking, what is it about? So no specific order. Anyone can jump into that.
I can start. So in my mind, a CISO is really a trusted advisor to the organization, both the business side and the IT side. And we're really there to help them understand the risks to their business, to any sort of decisions that they're making, but not just identify the risk, but also help them identify mitigating strategies to address those particular risks. I mean, at the highest level, I think that's really the goal of the CISO.
I think for me, it's strategically allowing the business to be able to meet their requirements, to have their digital strategies, have them secured. So it's really a trusted business partner. It's working along with all the executives. So I'm a senior leader in the organization. And so making sure that I'm enabling, my team is enabling, and as a business technology unit, we can actually enable what they need to have done.
Wonderful. Enabler.
I agree wholeheartedly. There have always been four kind of pillars that I've put CISO being on, one being the strategist, one being the technologist, one being the business leader, and of course, one being the overall owner of security within the organization. But as my colleagues say, a true CISO really is not one person who has full accountability and controls security within the organization. They're one that has to take some accountability, but at the same time, be able to work with the businesses and with all the teams to be able to bring together the right people and the right processes in order to combat the security threats and the risks to the organization.
Wonderful.
Maybe I'll just add. So I agree, obviously, with my peers here. I think the role for the CISO is also in an interesting place right now because it is also evolving in the industry. So when we look across the industry, different organizations, depending on reporting structures, depending on mandate, depending on sector, the CISO typically may play a different part within the organization. My perspective on what the CISO is really definitely there to protect the organization, but really the CISO is the source of truth on the security state of an organization. So you typically, like I think when I look at all the different factors and what's happening, you have a lot of fear mongering, you have a lot of breaches happening every day. You've got vendors who obviously want to sell and support their and provide their services. On the other hand, you have some technologists who don't necessarily understand security, and some business leaders who just want to get stuff done. And security is really intended to come in and provide that balanced view of, yes, sometimes maybe saying no, and sometimes saying how can we actually enable you securely.
Wonderful. So have you heard some key words from what they talk about, although they share different perspectives? What I heard, the keywords are something like security owner, advisor, enabler, and some communicator. So those are something I heard. So that's great. And as a CISO, we just had this cyber industry trend panel. So currently, there are a lot of things happening in the cyber field, right? So you heard all those hacking things every day. So from your point of view, what do you think the current state of the industry?
I can, provide sort of my perspective. I think, and some of my peers already sort of covered some of the trends and what we're seeing, and obviously the keynote covered some of those areas. If I look at what's happening, obviously we're getting informed with more breaches, but when you look at some of the root causes of what's happening, a lot of it is still the typical hygiene stuff related to asset management, related to vulnerability management. So there's a lot of that's something that sort of comes across as a theme. Cloud obviously has changed things. There's obviously a lot of change from a technology perspective. We're seeing quite a lot of changes happening in the technology field, and it's the pace of change that's happening, right? The other aspect that also from another trend that is happening when you look at some of those cyber breaches and how organizations are finding about those cyber breaches, a lot of them are coming through bug bounty programs, which I think that in itself is telling as well.
Yeah, as one, like many on this panel who've been in cyber for a long, long time, there's no doubt that cyber has truly evolved and has changed over the course of those years. When I first entered into the field, security was very small, very hidden away in an organization. The threats were strong, but they were scattered, and the tools to be able to deal with them were just as small in terms of quantity, but the quality was there to deal with it. Today, of course, cyber has really evolved and the threats have really evolved, and we're looking, as we mentioned, the pace of change to which those are coming. We look at variants to threats that come now within hours of each other versus weeks or months that they used to be. The good news, of course, is as CISOs and as security teams, we have more tools today than we ever have. We have very smart people who are working on the one side of the house to be able to deal with this. And so where the quantity is much higher and the quality of attacks are far greater, we also have the greatness of capability that we didn't have, say, 10, 15, or 20 years ago.
I think also one of the things that we overlook is really the supply chain and educating our developers, our business technology teams at what the risks are. Supply chain is where we are seeing most of the breaches come from, and we really have to start paying attention. We've heard a lot about encrypting data at rest. What about putting credentials into GitHub? We look at the breaches that have happened. Also, breaches, we've had mandatory reporting happen as well, so we're hearing more and more. The scale is larger and larger. Before we didn't hear about it. It was very, very closed loop. Now we have to report it.
And I mean, I agree with all my panelists, specifically even what Yaz was saying, really going back to basic cyber hygiene, going back to the basics, making sure that, the simple things are what attackers are using to get into organizations, your phishing emails. And really that's why we need to be focusing on things like access control, user awareness, vulnerability management, which includes patch management. All those things, if we do it right, it significantly reduces our risk profile.
My next question is regarding how do you do your job? CISO is not an easy job for sure. You have so many things to manage. For example, like Matthew, when I read his bio, there's so many teams to manage, right? So many programs. It doesn't matter it's technology perspective or the business or risk perspective. How do you come up with your overall cyber strategy or cyber program? Have any tips for the audience?
I can start with that one. So I mean, it's fairly basic. Number one, you start off with, the whole idea for cyber is really there to protect the business. And so before you develop an overall cyber program, it's really sitting down with the business to understand what it is they're trying to accomplish, what are their goals, their strategies for the coming year, for the coming years even, and really understand what are the risks for them achieving those goals. So based on what you hear about that, and then you understand your own internal cyber posture, what are the risks that you have, you take all those components and you develop your overall strategy, and you prioritize that strategy based on what are the highest risks, and then you execute that strategy through a roadmap and a overall security program.
Okay.
So the way that we create our strategy, it's actually several-fold. So we take a look at our security posture. So we create a roadmap to be able to create maturity within our organization. We kind of look at 50% of our time is actually looked at doing our roadmap, which is based on several different frameworks. And then we look at 50% of our time actually being advisory and support to the organization. So looking at what the business is actually doing. They come to us, they don't always necessarily plan and give us a lot of lead time to say, hey, 6 months down the road, we're doing this. Oh, by the way, next week, we're starting this new project. So we also have to be very agile. We've adopted cloud first over 5 years ago, so we've been dealing with agile, the transformation, all of those things. So we are agile in what we do, and we have to be. The other thing that we incorporate as part of our framework and our strategy is trust and verify. So we have policies, processes, procedures. We continuously update them, but we also monitor what we have.
Okay.
So just in terms of strategy development, I think, definitely understanding the business strategy, understanding the technology strategy. A lot of organizations also have a digital strategy, so those are all different and important components that come in to framing up an overall security strategy, understanding current state. Other aspects that are also included that you do need to also pay attention to are contractual requirements. So sometimes as an organization you have commitments from a security perspective that come in as well. And the regulatory landscape, different regulations in different areas require different considerations. So that's also something that needs to be factored in.
All right.
I think the only other thing I would add is, the CISO really has to, beyond looking at strategy, always has to be future thinking as well. Always has to be looking what's on the horizon, what's coming, and what is evolving. We look back 10 years ago when cloud really wasn't even there. We couldn't imagine that today we'd be in a cloud environment where cloud is so dominant in all organizations compared to the model that used to be. So it's important and inherent on leaders to really be able to understand that, see what's coming, and really be prepared for it and build it in as part of their future-looking strategy.
All right, cool. So that's the way you come up with the cyber strategy and the cyber programs. The other question related to that is, as a CISO, what kind of key challenges you are facing?
Talent shortage. I think that's
Right.
the key thing that we have for all organizations. Also, the toughest thing I find in environments is that again, going back to the development infrastructure teams, before we were very siloed from a technology perspective. So you had the networking group, they did we had firewall people, you had developers. Now when you go into a cloud environment, you actually have to understand all of those components. And that's where we actually fall down. Because if you don't have the background, you don't have the in-depth knowledge of it, you end up opening up things that you shouldn't necessarily do. So it's really cross-educating, taking people from our legacy systems who actually understand IT controls very well, but then moving those and adopting them into a cloud environment. So that's one of my things that keeps me up at night.
Okay.
I think the the most challenging thing, I think, for, obviously in addition to talent, is the balancing act that you actually really need to do as a CISO. Like it's definitely coordinating and working closely with the different technology groups. So you're working with the application teams, with the infrastructure teams, with technology. But over the years, I think as the security domain has become so complex and so diverse in terms of how it intertwines with different processes across the organization. So today a CISO needs to be working with HR with respect to insider risk, needs to work with legal on security contractual language, needs to work with finance on cyber insurance. So it's no longer just, typically just working with the technology teams. The role has expanded to actually work across the organization, and your work across the organization is very different, right? Compared to other cross-functional groups that exist.
If I can make a point first on the talent shortage, that's definitely one area of concern for us. And really, what's important is in security, there's different types of roles. There's certain roles that are internal facing to the IT organization. So, we look for people that can speak in the technical language that the IT teams will be able to understand. But then there's other roles as well where we require our staff to be able to speak to the business in a non, IT or security jargon way as well. So that's one of the challenges we find is finding that balance of an individual that can speak both at an IT level, but also at the business level. And that's one area where we're focused on our staff as well to make sure that they are really focused on building those communication skills. The other area that's of concern is really being able to detect issues as quickly as possible within our organization, any sort of security anomalies, and being able to react to that. And that's where the machine learning and the advanced technologies, having orchestration between the various security products that we have to identify these threats very quickly, that's an area of concern for us as well, because there's so many attacks that are happening. It's just keeping pace with them, and that's why you need effective technologies to be able to address that.
All right. Okay. Before I turn around to you, my last question is, since the CISO is also almost like an ultimate goal for a lot of cyber professionals. So for individual who wants to or already in this career path, what's your tip for them for your career development? Maybe they want to become a CISO someday. Yeah,
I can start. I think it's really developing both the technical skills, but also the soft skills in CISO, because there's a lot of work that you do with the business to be able to do, to be able to negotiate certain things, to have emotional intelligence. So soft skills are a very important piece of the role as well. I don't want to reduce the focus on the technical skills as well, because it's very important to understand the technical landscape. But I really think that, as you progress in your career, as you graduate out of university or college, you start off with a set of technical skills, and then you work your way up by improving your overall soft skills. And that's very important. Having the business skills as well, understanding how to deal with financials, things like that.
Yeah, I totally have to agree. I think the technical skills are the baseline for all those who are entering in or moving through their careers in the cyberspace. But there's no doubt, as one progresses through your career and wants to move towards a role such as a security executive or a CISO, there has to be that fundamental understanding of the business, be able to have that business acumen, to be able to speak with the business, to be able to help them understand, and be able to marry up those capabilities that you've built up throughout your career within the cyber field, within those technical spaces and be able to bring those with that capability of understanding and dialoguing with the business, bring them together to achieve really that goal of executive capabilities within cybersecurity.
I would add, I agree with everything that everyone else has said, but also being able to tell a story. And that's really critical from a security perspective, integrating it into the business strategy. It has to be part of the overall story that you're telling. Because from a business perspective, you can talk about the technical aspects, you can talk about all of this, but what is the journey? What is your strategy? What is the story that you're trying to tell?
I think security overall, obviously a very hot area. A lot of job security for a long time to come. But I think what's really important if you're looking to progress in this field is passion, being really passionate about this field, because it requires a lot of investment when you need to keep up with your skills, and it's not just technical skills, as my peers said, but it's also having these tough conversations, right? So to be able to do that, to be able to endure what is entailed, I think that's really important. But at the same time, it's a very rewarding career because every day, everything you do is actually benefiting and protecting citizens and the organization and other people's data. So it is a very rewarding industry and a very rewarding field, but you have to be passionate about it to continue to be to endure and sustain.
Wonderful. So the passion, the soft skills, the technical skills, the business knowledge, so all those are important when you move up to your career path. All right, so I'd like to turn to you. You can ask several questions.